For some analysis, let's turn to Paul Kawika Martin, the Senior Director at Peace Action. Welcome, Paul. With all the escalations we've seen in recent weeks, including the unprecedented sanctions recently put in place against North Korea, is the U.S. helping the situation by deploying a submarine, more missiles, and holding these drills with South Korea?
I don't think so. I think we continue to escalate the situation. I mean, people ask, are we going to go to war with North Korea? I think we are already at war with North Korea. Not only are we on a word war between the two leaders, continuing to threaten each other with nuclear weapons that could kill hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, but also there's probably a cyber war going on. There's no doubt that North Korea has been escalating its cyber warfare against various countries, and my guess is that the U.S. is using similar type tactics against North Korea. So we're already at war. Now, are we going to be at a war that ends up killing, what some people say, upwards of 1 million people in the Korean peninsula if a war were to break out? That's the main question. And so how do we make sure that doesn't happen? And the only thing that solved that in the past has certainly been diplomacy, as the former speaker just said. There's only a diplomatic solution here. There is no military solution. Any military solution could bring us into World War III or into a war that's going to kill millions of people.
Right, and in a way, this entire conversation about the possibility of war kind of shows you how deterrence, at least on the North Korean side, has worked. I mean, the reason we can't escalate militarily in the way we constantly hear about in the media is because everyone seems to agree the cost would be too high because North Korea has invested so much in defending itself.
Yeah, specifically, certainly on nuclear weapons. We may have tried some other sort of strategy, though there is the geopolitical questions that your former guest mentioned, which is, China. I mean, China would not look very favorably in any kind of military intervention by the U.S. into North Korea. So there are those have to be thought out as well. But it's clear that you should probably consider North Korea a nuclear weapon state at this point. They have shown the ability to detonate fairly significant nuclear weapons. They have decent missile technology. It's not certainly clear whether or not that technology would allow a nuclear weapon to actually survive coming in the atmosphere from an intercontinental ballistic missile, but you just have to assume that that is the case at this point. So we are now looking at war of words between two nuclear weapon states, in which the UN has just passed a treaty saying nuclear weapons should be illegal because of the humanitarian consequences of the use of nuclear weapons, which most of us can't even imagine. But we are talking about millions of deaths and the possibility of pieces of land not being able to use for long periods of time.
On the question of the constant escalating rhetoric and actions, however, the North has repeatedly said it would freeze its nuclear program if the U.S. halted drills, these joint drills they hold with South Korea on a yearly basis. What's preventing negotiations at this point?
I don't think there's anything preventing negotiations, and certainly my understanding that there are certain back-channel conversations being had. It's difficult to tell exactly what the president means. We've seen presidents say various things over and over again, only to do the exact opposite. And we also know that there's disagreement within the current administration with various parts of either the State Department or even on the Department of Defense, who know that a war, certainly a nuclear war or another war, would not be good. So I think that there are certain conversations happening already, but
Washington doesn't seem willing to accept that starting point for negotiations, at least at this point. Because we're running low on time, I want to move along. We have about a minute left, and it's been reported this week the Trump administration may decertify the Iran nuclear deal. Can you explain for viewers how that might impact the situation with respect to North Korea as well?
Well, this just shows how diplomacy works. Iran was maybe 3 months away, if it so chose, to being able to make a very crude nuclear device. Because of the Iran agreement negotiated by world powers, not just the U.S., but this is a multilateral agreement, including Russia, Now, Iran is at least a year away, if it's so decided, and it has the highest level of verification and people monitoring their nuclear systems and the country. That has made America and the world safer. Now Trump wants to decertify that and perhaps unravel that agreement. And what is North Korea going to think? Here's a country that we are up for our word. We said one thing, that we would do one thing, and Iran has been in compliance according to all levels of experts. And now we're going to basically renege from the deal. And so how does that make us a good actor in other negotiations, such as North Korea?
It's a good question. We'll have to see what the rest of the international community will have to say if we indeed move on with that decision here in Washington. Paul Kawika Martin, Senior Director at Peace Action, thanks a lot.